Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Kirschenbaum. Thanks for joining us. We have a great presentation today, packed with information. We have also an audience that is packed with one alarm expert after another, which I'm very happy to see. And Matt can't wait to field your questions, and I'll be happy to convey them as you write them in. I'm sure you're going to have questions. So Matt Haiman of Premier Alarm Systems, and that's his partner, I think you can see with him, Eldorado Ellis, who's also the service manager of the Premier Alarm Systems. They did the installation of the fire alarm system, the EVAC system in the building, and of course the building's in Miami. And you're going to hear all about that system. You're going to hear about what was required. You're going to hear, I'm going to take the suspense out of it. You're going to find out that everything was working as it was supposed to be, and which was a good thing. I'll get into later, perhaps some of the legal issues that came up. Although the interesting thing about this case and this matter was that because of such a terrible tragedy that occurred at this place, it wound up resolving itself in a very quick period of time, and not based on law as far as I can tell. It was based more on humanitarian interests and decisions. And Matt will tell you more about that. So I know Matt's anxious to get started. I'm going to, Matt, I'm getting ready to turn this over to you now. And you're okay. Matt is now the presenter, and where's his screen? Oh, you guys should accept it, and then your screen's gonna pop up. Let's get your PowerPoint up there. Okay. So if you have you folks, if you have questions, please write them in. I'll try and edge my way into Matt's presentation. He's pretty fluid, so I'm not sure I can interrupt him too many times, but we'll see. I'll do my best. Guys, you gotta accept your presenter and put your screen up, your webinar up. How we doing?
Are you talking to me, Ken?
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Take over the screen.
Yeah, we're ready.
Go ahead. Ready. I made you the presenter. Take over the screen.
All right. Thank you, Ken, for allowing us to present this webinar today. Again, my name is Matt Haiman. I'm the president of Premier Fire Alarm Systems, and beside me is Eldorado Ellis. He's the service manager and part owner of the business as well.
Wait, Matt, put your screen up first before you start. You put your PowerPoint up. Right now, mine's on there.
Okay, I apologize, Carlos. Can you see it now?
There you go. Okay, now you're good. Okay, you're on your own, Matt. Let's go.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Ken, for inviting me to this webinar. Let me introduce Eldorado Ellis beside me. He is the service manager, and he's also owner of Premier Fire Alarm Systems. Okay, so let me start off by stating our experiences. Carlos, can you present the intro letter? Okay, let me start off by talking about the experience of Premier Fire Alarm Systems. I've been in this business for 30 years. All we do is retrofit installations in the state of Florida. We don't do parts and smarts. Everything we install, we do in-house. Again, I've been in this business for 30 years. We're a notifier distributor and a Potter distributor. We also install BDA systems throughout South Florida. Now, what separates us from the rest of the fire alarm dealers in South Florida is we don't do parts and smarts. We literally bring existing buildings up to current code compliance. In the last 10 years, we've done approximately $75 million in installations. Next page. Now, I would like to discuss the Champlain Towers incident that night. Although I couldn't speak, I had to stay quiet for the last year. As everybody knows, this has been a tragedy. It's worldwide. It's renowned. Everybody has heard of what has happened. Now, When I received the initial call that evening at 1:15 a.m., I received a call from the property manager the following day. This is a video. This is a picture of the main lobby of the building. Now, I want to show you something that's important. If you notice, there's a camera that's highlighted. If you see that in the upper right-hand corner. All right, next picture. Next picture, we're going to show the existing fire alarm system that we replaced. The existing fire alarm system was installed in the mid-'80s. It's a conventional voice evacuation system, and as you notice, it's sitting directly behind the security desk. You can see that chair there. Next photo. This photo you will see is the new fire alarm panel that we installed. Beautiful job. As you can see, it's a clean background. Again, you'll see the chair of that security guard. Next photo. This is a photograph of the new panel cleared. Next photo. This email was sent to me right after the collapse. It was sent on June 30th, and as you can read it, it discusses me requesting some information for the fire department, and of course the property manager wanted to speak to me in this matter, and he requested, of course, I don't speak to anybody. I obliged. Next photo. That's my telephone number. Next photo. All right. Now in this email, I'm following up because I'm trying to explain to the property manager the importance of retrieving the CPU on the fire alarm system. The reason being is the CPU stores up to 3,000 events and 1,000 alarm events. It was important to retrieve this because there was going to be a controlled demolition for the rest of the building. So I reached out to the property manager, advised the importance of this, and of course he did not reach out to me for 3 days later. And if you see what his response is on July 7th, they did not cheers. Those are the only 4 words, and you can see my response. What's the next email, Carlos? Oh, you don't have it. Okay. So my next response was, this is going to come and bite us in the end. All right. So now let's talk about the story. This is the photograph, the photo that you've seen of the parking garage with the deluge of water. This is what it looks like from the outside in daylight. Next photo. I'm going to play this video for you, and this is the same video we did in my deposition. We'll talk about my deposition in a few minutes. Now, this video, they claim, was what triggered the alarm system. They're saying the sprinkler head engaged, which activated the flow switch, which turned on the alarm system. I do not agree with that whatsoever. So let me play the video, and then we're going to discuss the picture above. Play the video. If you notice, you will see the deluge of water in the background of that video. All right, Carlos. All right. So that's the deluge of water that we've seen worldwide on that video. So let me show you now the inside of the parking garage. They claim it's the fire sprinkler head. Again, I don't agree with you. Agree with them. If you look in the still photo with the markings, let's talk about the first marking that's marked in red. That's a sprinkler pipe. That's a head. Okay. Right below it, in the yellow marking, that is drainage. Carlos, go to the far right. The other yellow markers is all drainage. As you can see, there's multiple pipes strapped to that ceiling. In a parking garage, typically the entire building's infrastructure is strapped to that ceiling, and then it goes vertically up. Okay. So getting back to that sprinkler head in that video, it's impossible for that sprinkler head to engage that deluge of water. Had that sprinkler head gone off, it would have instantly gone into alarm. Now, this is important. We'll talk about this when El Rado talks about the Central Station report. when the alarm engaged, it first engaged in a trouble condition and soon after an alarm condition. So I know for a fact it wasn't a sprinkler that activated the alarm system. In my beliefs, I think it was a catastrophic failure with our conduit system and the tonnage of all that concrete, because it came in as a trouble first, and within 27 seconds, it went into alarm mode. Getting back to the yellow icons, if you notice, there's a lot of drainage up there. And above that is the swimming pool. So getting back to that video of the deluge of water, I can tell you for a fact it wasn't fire sprinkler. Had it been a fire sprinkler system, you wouldn't have seen that type of deluge. As soon as that fire pump would have engaged, it would have pressurized that pump. It would have almost, and I'm not a fire sprinkler expert, but speaking to my experts, that water would have shot out kind of like a pressure cleaner. You wouldn't have seen that free falling water like that if the fire pump engaged. Next photo. All right, now I'm going to show you a few photos of what's attached to a ceiling inside that parking garage. As you can see, there's a lot of infrastructure there. Next photo. This is the pool deck that everybody has heard about in the news. If you notice, you will see some spalding of the concrete in that room, but most importantly, what's above that room? The building's infrastructure. Look at all the pipes. You've got plumbing, you've got electrical, you've got fire sprinkler. You basically got everything on that garage ceiling, and then of course everything goes vertically into the building. So next photo. More infrastructure. Next photo. This is the fire pump that was in the building. Next photo. All right. This is the annual inspection report of the newly installed system. Now, the background of this building is the following. It's a 12-story building, approximately 127 units. The system that we installed was a Notifier 3030. It's an addressable system, state-of-the-art, flawless installation. It's a very clean installation. As you can see with the device counts, it's not a big system. Since the building was fully sprinkled, there wasn't that many initiating devices installed. There was no need for full smoke detection throughout the building because the building was fully sprinkled, including the living units. If you notice on the second page, all of the audible devices, there's quite a bit. Originally, there was only one speaker in the foyer of each apartment. The code states we must receive 75 decibels at the pillow. The only way to achieve that is to install a speaker in every single bedroom, which we did. As you can see with the counts, the 242 counts, those are all speakers in the apartments. Next photo. This is the inspection report. The building collapsed on June the 24th. We were scheduled to do the inspection 4 days later. Unfortunately, as you know, that did not happen. Next photo. All right. Now I'm going to pass the table over to Elrado Ellis. Elrado Ellis was the one that received the call at 1:15 a.m. and he will describe the signals received and what actions Central Station had taken and the actions that Premier Fire had also taken. Elrado?
Yes, hi everybody. Well, this slide you see on your screen, this is the Central Station report on the morning of the collapse, 6:26. In the highlighted portion, what you're seeing at 1:15 and 29 seconds, that morning of the 26th, we first received a signal trouble at that time, and then shortly after that, at 1:15, 46.7, then we receive an alarm signal. Okay, we're not aware of what it is, but we only can speculate. But it shows you the transcript of really what occurred. The first order of business is what the Central Station does. Automatically, they sent an email at 1:15 and 47 seconds describing the signal they received, which is a fire alarm signal, and the time it occurred, and also the property, which is in this case Champlain Towers, and reporting of such, the address and so forth. The next thing that immediately happened, I guess manual mode would be at 1:16 and 27 seconds, the central station contacted the authorities, which is the fire department, reporting the occurrence of a fire alarm. And it goes on to 1:17 and 51 seconds, just keeping a track of the discussion and the time they're on the phone with the fire department. 1:17 and 53 seconds, it tells you the dispatch number, which is 126. So that's just information on who they're talking to at the dispatch center. And at 1:17:55, it tells that they contacted Premier Fire, which is a protocol that they follow. After they speak with the fire department, they contact the key holder, which is a contractor. And at 1:19 and 31 seconds, they give the comment. No, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. The premise that I misspoke. On 1:17:55 seconds, that's the premise they contacted at the building, which is Champlain Tower. And 1:19, the comment is what is there that they received in the transcript. This personnel that they spoke to stated that this was an earthquake and unusual. So they're pretty much saying it's a false alarm. And at 1:19 at 36 seconds, the dealer, which is Premier Fire, they contact and left a detailed message on the occurrence. And when you go a little bit lower, 1:21 seconds, it's pretty much saying the case was closed, it was handled, but resolution, if you see false alarm, this is based on the information they received from the security personnel at the front desk, stating it was like an earthquake. So it was, but per the code, still the fire department was still dispatched and they went out regardless. And the other stuff below is what occurred possibly when the fire department got to the building and evacuated everybody. They killed the power and all of that stuff. So these are just AC power lost, and then the radio sending signals still, because it was still alive.
3 days later.
The section of the building that was standing, that panel was there still alive, transmitting all of those signals pretty much days after.
Yeah, the system, the FP&L killed the power in the building roughly at 4 a.m. The panel then kicked in with its batteries and ran for an additional 3 days. So we were getting signals for 3 days following the collapse. To me, that was a phenomenal job. That was a great installation. The code states 24 hours of battery backup time. But I want to go back to the comments from 1:19. When we contacted the security guard said it was an earthquake and tried to disregard the phone call. Our central station automatically dispatched the fire department because eventually we received an alarm condition. Thank God he did that, because that's what got the trucks in front of those buildings. Had the system not gone off, imagine there was only a 7-minute window, what could have happened? So whatever triggered the alarm system, thank God it did, because it's not a seismic detection system. It needs 3 actions. It needs smoke, it needs heat, or manual means. None of that occurred. Even when the building collapsed, there was no fire, there was no smoke, debris, just rubble. So whatever triggered that alarm, thank God it did. My opinion, I think it was a catastrophic failure with the conduit system. Again, the building's entire infrastructure is strapped to the ceiling of that garage. That's where the incident occurred at. And then, of course, the risers go vertically into the building. My opinion is, prior to us receiving that signal, what was going on with that building? Was it shaking? Was it swaying side by side, compromising the infrastructure of that building? The building's infrastructure, the electrical system, the drainage system, the domestic water system, the fire sprinkler system, cable TV, you name it, it's strapped to that ceiling, but it's rigid. It's not designed to take that kind of impact. So getting back to the catastrophe, my opinion is possibly those metal conduits crushed, which caused a short circuit, which the trouble occurred, and within seconds put it into alarm mode. Unfortunately, we did not have pinpoint identification through Central Station. The building did not want that. It wasn't needed. Since the building had 24-hour security, all we needed was trouble conditions and alarms. Once the fire department arrived on site, they can go to the fire alarm control panel see exactly where the problem area occurred, and then go to it and address it. What's the next slide, Carlos? I want to, all right, the question, go back, I'm sorry. All right, so getting back to that, now, you know, as everybody knows, the Miami Herald placed this article, the fire alarm system did not work, there was 98 lives lost. I received a phone call, and it was a difficult call to receive when you're accused of killing 98 people. We know that system worked flawlessly. Again, it's not a seismic detection system, it's a fire alarm system, and it requires actions. It's not designed to engage during a building's tremble. So after the Miami Herald's report, soon after I got subpoenaed. With approximately 200 sharks, there was 200 lawyers on my Zoom screen. It was intimidating because everybody was pointing their fingers at Premier Fire Alarm System, that the system did not work. Well, I had to give them a 101 class on fire alarm systems, how the fire sprinkler system works and the fire alarm system. The fire sprinkler's flow switches has to provide an action to trigger my monitor module. We don't know if that's happened, but again, it needs to receive an action to properly work. And again, we don't believe that had happened. So I'm going to pass it back to Elrado Ellis because I want him to discuss the other signals that you did receive.
But from it, it's just like battery troubles after the collapse you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, those were just regular system troubles because the building had lost power and the radio was still energized. And I think the fire panel was still in the area of the building that was still erected. So signal was still being transferred because the system has a backup battery. Both the fire panel has a backup battery and the radio had a backup battery. So the system maintained all that information.
And to add to what Elrado mentioned about the radio, we have our own private AES mesh network. We have approximately 800 radios installed. So that radio actually received a signal within 57 seconds. It worked flawlessly. It's a great device.
Yes, correctly. So, but had we had received that CPU, then it would definitely answer all the questions in regards to what triggered the alarm first and what was that initial trouble. We only could speculate now, but we know the building shift. So possibly if it could be the wire got disintegrated on a shift, but all that information would have been in that CPU, which we requested to have pulled from the building initially.
And the importance of this CPU is because during my deposition, I informed those lawyers, we need to actually see what the security guard did. And this is where the bigger lawsuit came into play. What was the actions of that security guard? She had received a telephone call from our central station. She did report that it was an earthquake, possible false alarm. What did she do next? We don't know that. So during my deposition, we presented photos. Carlos, can you go back to the photo with the main lobby? Next one. Next one, I'm sorry. Right there. All right. This is the photo of the main lobby. If you notice on the upper right-hand corner, you will see a camera. I said to the attorneys, we need to get the video footage of that camera and see what that security did when she handled that telephone call. My belief is she possibly could have silenced the fire alarm system, compromising the residents in that building. Because the alarm occurred at 1:15 a.m., there was no smell of smoke or no fire present. Maybe she turned it off and she did not want to wake up the residents. Well, what she did was absolutely wrong. What she should have done was press the all call button to alert the residents there's something unusual in the building, please evacuate. All right. So I informed the attorneys that deposed me about this and said, you know what, you should pull this footage and you'll see the real story on what happened. All right. So fast forward, now they depose Securitas, the security firm that was hired to protect the residents in that building. Well, the security firm that hired the security officer only received 8 hours of training, period. That was it. That's what was told to me. Also, the security guard that was supposed to be deposed was missing in action. The attorneys was unable to take her deposition. They ended up taking the deposition of the regional manager of Securitas. All right. One of the discussions during the deposition is, what is the security company's responsibilities? Well, the security firm's responsibilities in this building was just to provide concierge services, nothing more. Mr. Rosen, the attorney representing Champlain Towers, simply said, well, let me ask you this. If it's just concierge service, is it part of your contract to also press that all call button in the event of an emergency? Well, the regional manager for the security firm couldn't answer that question. Well, the question is, the answer is they should have pressed that button. Had they pressed that button, they would have saved more lives in that building. That being said, the security firms paid a total of $517,500,000 because of that mishap. Even today, that security guard is nowhere to be found, you know. And what's funny, at the beginning of all of this, they praised the security guard as the hero, and Premier Fire Alarm Systems was the villain. Had the security guard did her job, again, more lives would have been saved. Again, this system is not a seismic detection system. It's a fire alarm system, and it requires actions. None of those actions occurred that night. There was no flame, there was no smoke, and there was no manual means. Although after the alarm system did trigger, we noticed that other floors did engage. So that means that somebody obviously pulled the pull station on the upper floors, which triggered the strobe lights in those areas. Because of the news coverage, you can clearly see that on the television. Also, I would like to mention in the news coverage, they also showed the lobby with the elevator doors wide open. So we obviously know that when the fire alarm system engaged, it recalled the elevators down to the first floor lobby and opened up the doors. Now, one of the things that the news article said is, well, the alarm system didn't work. The entire building did not go off into alarm. Well, it's not a general alarm fire alarm system. It's a floor above, floor below design system. So the floor that went into alarm was possibly the upper garage floor and then the lower lobby. The rest of the building is not going to engage unless a fire would spread throughout the building and more floors would engage. Typically, a floor above, floor below would work like this. Let's say, for example, the 10th floor went into alarm. It would be 11, 9, and 10. That's it, not the rest of the building. And the reason, and the main lobby, I'm sorry, and drop the elevators down to the first floor. Not the entire building, because let's use this building as an example, 127 units. You have 2 or 3 people living in the building, in a unit, that you're talking about 600 or 700 residents. Had this gone into a general alarm, that stairwells would have been overflowed, possibly causing injury. That's why Miami-Dade County requires the floor above, floor below activation, and that's exactly what we designed. Now, after the fire alarm installation, it took about 6 months to complete the inspections with the Miami-Dade Fire Department. They are very extensive. They test absolutely every single device, and sometimes they'll test the device more than one time. Most importantly, inside the living units, the fire department will take a calibrated meter and to determine if the speaker is providing the 75 decibels at the pillow as required. That's a minimum standard. 74 decibels, the building won't fly. It has to receive a minimum of 75 decibels. There's no question about that. System worked flawlessly. After we received the final inspection from the Miami-Dade Fire Department, we issued an ETL certificate. And in fact, that building was audited the following year. So we know for a fact that that system was stellar. It worked great. Going back to the building, in my opinion, I mean, obviously there was structural issues, but the building was a clean building. The sprinkler pipes were not corroded in the parking garage. There's several buildings we service in South Florida. We had to cancel contracts because of not taking care of their buildings. This building, everything looked sound, it looked well. we used the building's existing infrastructure to install the new fire alarm system. The conduit system inside this building, when it was originally installed with the simplex panel, had 2-inch pipes, plenty of room to install this new system and to make it aesthetically pleasing. When we finally completed the installation looked like it was installed when the building was constructed. Carlos, go back to the existing panel, and then we'll show the new panel. This is what the old panel looked like. If you see the background, it's an old simplex conventional panel. It had voice evac. It's a fully sprinkled building. There was not smoke detection throughout the common areas, sprinkler heads. That's it. The only areas of smoke detector coverage was the unoccupied spaces, storage rooms, electrical rooms, laundry rooms. That is it. Show the new picture of the. This is the new notifier system we installed. As you can see, very clean installation. There's also the chair with the security personnel that received the call directly behind her desk. When she received that call, my question is, why didn't she go up to the panel and read what the display stated? She never did that. She never did that. She never informed our central station on what was going on with that. All right. So I'm going to pass it back over to El Rado. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, the most important thing is that, and I'm sure a lot of people watching the media and listening don't really know, but for us to brought to attention is that the alarm system did go off, and it did sound in the building prior to the collapse. There was audible sounds going off, and per whatever floors that it was going off, so there was alarm sounding. Whether the personnel that was on site, I mean, we could speculate based off the response they gave to the central station that it was really an unusual, it seemed like it's an earthquake. So I'm wondering if they would sit knowing that, because in their eyes, if you say it's a false alarm, you're gonna sit and let the system ring, or you're gonna silence it, you know what I mean? So, but most importantly, we just want to put out there that the system did go off. There was an alarm. Whether they had checked the area to see if it was something real or not, then silence it, or they sat and let it ring. But what the protocol is, and we are happy that our central station did, they didn't call the property first. They called the fire department. Fire department then dispatched, and the central station followed with a call to the premise. So even then, our central station did not call back to cancel that fire alarm. They allowed the fire department to go on site. But the system was in alarm. Even all those videos we've seen on the news, there was strobe lights flashing all over the place. So the news that the system didn't work, or what the speculations are out there, that's false. There was an actual alarm going off at the building.
Yeah. And let's talk about speculation. The first call I received was from the Miami Herald. It was early morning hours. The guy called me and said, hey, he's going to publish a story. Would you like to add to the story? And at the beginning, I was very polite. I said, let the professionals do their job. And once they're done with their analysis, then we could talk about this. Well, he posted an article about these alleged experts. Now, one of them, this guy named Jeff Zerwin. I don't know who this guy is. I did a Google search. He has a lot of credentials beside his name, but I don't see anything about a life safety engineer or a professional engineer. Well, Jeff, in South Florida, we don't use clacks and horns. This isn't Beirut. South Florida, we use speakers in our unit. So for him and these other alleged experts to say this, they just basically inflamed the story. Had they have done the most simplest means of investigation by going to the building department, pulling the plans, seeing the contract, they would have seen the sequence of operation on how the fire alarm system is supposed to operate. I don't think the story would have been inflamed as it had been due to the Miami Herald's reports. And it's upsetting to hear that from a true expert. Again, clacks and horns aren't used. Again, it's not Beirut. This is South Florida. We install life safety systems. So I just wanted to add that. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much the story. It's now over. Thank God. This last year has been very stressful on myself. It's taken a lot of my time away from the building to prepare for defense. We were ready to go full blown and defend ourselves on this matter. Unfortunately, my deposition was so great that they used it against the security firm, which ended up again paying out $517 million. The security firm is worth $60 billion. They do annual sales of roughly $2 billion, so it's a drop in the bucket for them. Again, I'm just glad it's over. Now, I will say this. Everybody that was attached to this building, everybody's policy limits were paid out, regardless if they were involved with the life safety portion of it, or they were an attorney, or simply somebody that delivered equipment. And why I say this, there was a backhoe operator that simply delivered construction equipment to the building, and his insurance policy paid out the limits. So everybody that touched that building obviously got hit, including myself. My central station, the law firms, everybody paid out just for this, to settle this matter. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Ken, is there anything that you would like to add? And I apologize. This is my first webinar. I've never done this before, and I was a little nervous, to say the least. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. Seems like the fire alarm worked. What signal was received as soon as there was some kind of break? Sounds like it was either water flow or perhaps wire breaking that would have set this alarm off, correct?
Possibly, yes, sir.
Okay, we know it wasn't smoke or heat that set it off. So
correct.
The system, describe what was required by code and what you installed for this evac system, this building-wide communication system. Just describe what was required and what you had installed.
Since the building was fully sprinkled, automatic means wasn't necessary. And what do I mean by that? It wasn't required to put full smoke detectors throughout the property, the common areas, the unoccupied spaces, the living units. The only requirement was audibility. Since the building was fully sprinkled, that was the automatic means. If a sprinkler head was to receive 135 degrees or 155 degrees of heat, it would trigger that head. Then that head would provide an action to that flow switch, would send a signal to my monitor module, which would engage the alarm system. That is the only, that is the way the system was originally installed. That's how the new system was installed with the additional audibility speakers. The original system only had a speaker in the main foyer, the entrance of each apartment. The new code states we must receive 75 decibels at the pillow. The only way to achieve that was to install speakers in every single bedroom. So we installed a speaker in every single bedroom. Now, one of the comments during all of this, they said, well, why wasn't there any smoke detectors in the living units? Well, it's not a requirement. System smoke detectors. The only requirement in the living units are 110-volt battery backup. They're not interconnected to the fire alarm system whatsoever.
Wait a minute. The absence of smoke detectors, which were not required, isn't really the issue here, apparently. What the issue is the communication system. So speakers were in each of these units.
Correct.
And the question is, when were they supposed to issue an evacuation order or issue some kind of warning throughout the building? At what point?
The only way you could initiate an emergency throughout the building is by taking control of that microphone and pressing an all call. Because of the design of this fire alarm system, it was only floor above, floor below. The incident happened at the bottom floor. Had it happened on the 10th floor, again, it would have been the 10th floor, the 11th, and the 9th. Only those 3 floors would have gone into alarm. Now, the older system.
Wait! Don't jump ahead so fast. It was a floor above, a floor below, and the floor where the alarm signal was detected. Okay. What exactly would the notice be? Would there be flashing lights? Would there be sound? Would there be a vac order on those floors only?
there would be 3 tones, and after the tones to wake up the residents. The tones are which have the 75 dB rating. That's going to get your attention. Then you're going to hear a pre-recorded message. Please evacuate the building. Do not use the elevators, use the stairwells. And that will repeat itself over and over again. Now, had it been...
Wait. Hold it. Let me just ask you this. So if when that fire alarm signal goes out and the evac system activates above and below the 3 floors, there is a recorded notice telling the residents to leave evacuate, leave the premises. That's the recording. It's not stay in place. It's not maybe there's an alarm, maybe there's a fire, maybe there isn't. It's a fire alarm's been received. You are to evacuate. Don't use the elevators.
Yes, sir.
That's what should have gone off. Now in this particular case, the fire alarm was in the basement.
Correct.
So this notification go out to the basement and maybe the first floor?
That's the only floors that engage were those 2 floors. None of the floors above engage until somebody manually pull the pull station on the upper floors.
All right, wait a minute. Let's just talk about the first signal. The first signal goes out. It's in the base, comes from the basement. The evac system activates. So on
Yes.
the first floor, what are people hearing from the speaker?
Nobody, because there was no living units in the lower floors. The living units started on the 2nd floor above. So there was no living units downstairs. So the only areas of notification was the parking garage, the lobby, and the first floor, which was the mezzanine. And that floor had like a gymnasium, a conference room, etc. There was no living units above.
Did the lobby have speakers?
Yes, sir.
So were the speakers did the lobby speakers announce that residents should evacuate?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But unfortunately, residents did not hear that because there was no
Correct.
living units in the.
But the guard was there.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, what the guard could have done and didn't do was manually hit an all building announcement telling everyone to evacuate. And that would be something that the guard would have to hold down a microphone, sort of, or is there a button they could have pushed that just activated the whole thing?
Well, and during my deposition, one of the important things I said is this system doesn't have AI intelligence. It still needs human interaction. We simply installed a tool. The human interaction should have been hitting that all call button to inform the rest of the residents there's an emergency in a building, get out. That was not done.
That would have been the guard making
Correct.
that announcement. It's not a pre-recorded announcement.
Correct. And I want to add, after we install these systems, we give extensive training, but this particular building was private managed. The staff, the turnover staff was unbelievable. Within the last 2 years, they've gone through 3 or 4 property managers.
All right.
No, but it's important because the security guard was not trained.
All right, but whether trained or not trained, do we know what the security guard did when the announcement came in the lobby to evacuate the building?
Had we received the video, we would have known the truth. I've not seen the video. The video could have been.
Wait. The answer is we don't know what the guard did. But we do know that at no time did the guard activate the manual notification system and make any kind of announcement.
Absolutely. Now let me add, if we retrieved the black box, the CPU from the building, it would have recorded every action that went off on that fire alarm system. So
all right, but let's just talk about what we do know. Now, the fire alarm came in at 1:15. Do we, I guess we know, when did that building actually collapse?
7 minutes later. 7 minutes. That was 7 minutes.
Do you know whether there is, by the way, before I get to that, this evac system, this notification system that you designed it, you installed it, you told us exactly how it works. This was precisely to Miami code and AHJ spec requirements.
Yes, sir. And South Florida has such the most stringent codes, I think, in the nation.
I just want to make that clear. You did what you were supposed to do, and it worked. It was working. Now, were there any studies or conversation about how long a building like that would have taken to evacuate? Had everyone started to evacuate at 1:15, precisely at 1:15, do they say that 7 minutes is enough time for that building to evacuate?
I honestly don't know of any study of such, so I can't answer that.
Okay, so we don't know what would have happened anyway. And the next thing is, how long had this fire alarm been installed?
Roughly about 2 years, 2.5 years.
In the 2 years, had there been any false alarms? And I ask that for this reason. Were the residents potentially desensitized to a risk of a fire alarm going off?
No. The issue we had after the installation was one faulty pull station at the main lobby that was immediately replaced once we received the signal from Central Station. We replaced that, and we provided documentation during my deposition showing that, because they stated that one of the residents said it was a faulty pull station, never worked. So we provided documentation that, in fact, we replaced it, and we did an annual inspection soon after and identified no deviations whatsoever.
But all right, but there'd never been any mass notifications or even floor-by-floor notifications to evacuate that turned out to be a false alarm.
No, right. Not at all.
So had this gone off, this would have actually been the first time they would have heard such an announcement like that to evacuate.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we have that down. Now, the fire alarm, when it went off at 1:15, it called the elevators back to the lobby?
It brought them down to the first floor. It opened the doors for the fire department's use when they arrived.
Right. So anyone leaving would have had to have used the stairwell at that point.
The stairwells would be the only means of evacuation. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now those are my questions. And before let me just get into something else. This is Matt made a comment that everybody and anybody who the plaintiffs in this case could think of were brought into this lawsuit. And as far as Matt knows, every one of the parties who had insurance, the insurance decided to pay out the policy limits. Now,
it was the business decision that they made. They don't want to have years of litigation.
Correct. So they made it more or less a humanitarian decision to settle this thing very, very quickly and save the problems. Now, the reason that Securitas wound up paying a lion's share of this claim was because it simply had a larger insurance policy. It may very well have been more to blame than anybody else, but that wasn't the reason it paid out what it did. It paid out what it did because that was the size of the policy it had. So maybe the guy with the backhoe, who had nothing to do with this, unless he banged in the wall in while he was there, and we don't know about that. So his carrier, maybe we don't have all the details of what carriers paid, but according to Matt, they all paid out. So his carrier threw in whatever policy he had. So,
yeah, but not his limit. They paid only a percentage. $250K is what his carrier paid. He had $1 million policy.
Oh, so they all didn't pay out limits. Okay.
No, we paid out limits. My Central Station paid out limits, but some of the other the vendors possibly did not. The pool guy, I'm sure, didn't pay out his full limits. But again, according to my attorney, the backhoe guy paid $250K. That was it, just simply to deliver equipment to the property. That's all he did, nothing
Right.
more.
Right, I got it. He had no liability. The carrier was just convinced, again, for humanitarian reasons, or public relations reasons, if that ever comes out, to just pay it out. So one of the first comments we got was that the case settled, and this came from the insurance administrator from Sarge, Security America, that they settled to get it out of the public domain. But he says they're going to sue everybody else to recoup the amount they paid out. I don't know how that could be an accurate prediction, because it doesn't seem like there's anybody left to sue.
They're gonna have to prove liability. That's gonna be impossible, especially with the evidence.
Who's left anyway? Everybody was already in this case and participated and resolved it. I would be surprised if the defendants among themselves reserved the right to cross-claim against each other. Now that's possible, and I don't know if Matt knows that or not, whether they did. They may have, but we don't have that information. It seems like it's over. Matt's lawsuit apparently is over, and he hasn't been called upon to give any additional testimony at this point. So that's the practical reason of why everything just got settled. And look, there are E&O claims against alarm companies all the time, and the carriers, especially now, are out there settling them instead of defending them. Not a good policy, but not many cases, maybe none, have the horrendous factual situation that this one did. Here's a technical question. Did the sprinkler system incorporate alarm check valves and sprinkler system pressure supervisory to the FAP?
I can't answer that because I don't know.
Okay. Is it possible that the first sprinkler pipe broke when the collapse first started? If so, the first signal, what's the FAP? First signal.
Fire alarm control panel, FACP.
Okay. So the first signal to the fire alarm control panel should have been a pressure drop, then followed a few seconds after that with a water flow alarm. That's speculation, right?
Now it could possibly be the case, and the reason being is, let me explain. At 1:15 and 29 second, we received the trouble. Then at 1:15 and 46 second, it went into alarm. So it could be a flow switch that engaged, but also it could be a catastrophe to the infrastructure of the cable.
Okay. Have you had any Have you had any thoughts about being in the fire alarm business since this event? Looking back, is there anything you may have done differently? I think he did everything just right, and no reason for him to feel any guilt of conscience here. He did everything he had to do, right?
My biggest fear was going through several years of litigation. I was more than confident that we've done nothing wrong. The system worked flawlessly as it was designed. Again, it's a fire alarm system. It's not a seismic detection system. It doesn't have AI intelligence. It still needs a human to interact. At the end of the day, that security guard should have grabbed that microphone and did her job. Had she done her job, she would have possibly saved more lives.
Okay, this is from one of the real experts out there. Excellent presentation by Matt. Getting the panel history from the central station was your saving factor. That is a good move on any claim. Go get that central station history report.
Let me add to that also. Do you notice all the photos that we have during any of my installations? And we do quite a bit in South Florida. If you notice, we take photos of the progress of our installations to keep track of it. I'm going to show you something. Let me grab it.
That, by the way, was extremely professional, Matt, and a real good move.
This is the Champlain Towers history. This is the Bible, and most of my buildings have this Bible just for liability. reasons. There's buildings that I cancel in South Florida all the time. If I believe there's an issue and the buildings are not going to correct it, I cancel them. I don't need the liability. I've worked hard building this company. I've got several thousand accounts, and I'm not going to lose this for nobody. So we create our defense. I deal with lawyers all the time, so I've been trained very well.
Well, that's a terrific best practices, maybe above and beyond best practice. That I congratulate you on.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cross your T's, dot your I's. That's what I do, because you know what? It worked in this situation.
All right. We know the guard silenced an event on the panel. We know that the guards silenced an event on the panel. I don't know, is that right? I don't know if we don't know if he silenced the guard. We don't think the guard, doesn't sound to me like the guard silenced anything.
We don't know. That's why it was important to get this video, because if we would have seen the video that was facing him, that security guard, we would have recorded her actions. We would have known exactly what was going on that night. The moment she picked up the telephone, did she look at the panel behind the desk, and what action did she take? Did she touch the panel or do nothing at all? That video would have told the entire story. And that's what I said during my deposition. And thank God I had those photos that showed that camera. I said, you get that camera footage, that will tell you the story.
Was the insurance paid out on the occurrence limit, or was it the umbrella included? Well,
all I can tell you is I paid the limits. My policy limits were paid out.
Right. Okay. So carriers, alarm companies should have a basic policy. Usually it's $1 million. Sometimes it's more. And fire alarm companies should have more. And then there's an excess policy. There's an excess policy you can get on top of that. And I'm sure that the carriers in this case paid everything.
Well, what I can tell my fire alarm partners is $1 million is not enough. Up your policy limits, because God forbid this happens. They're coming after you. You want to lose your company, protect you.
I agree. I've recommended 3 to 5 million in fire alarm companies. But the truth of the matter is, an incident like this just shows you that there is no amount that you can actually plan on. The damages can be so catastrophic that there is no limit really to where you have to plan.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have just another question.
On top of that, the criminal element. I mean, there was lives were lost. I was afraid that, you know what, this is going to go on for years and somebody's going to be criminally charged because somebody's ultimately responsible for the death of those residents.
It would not have been the fire alarm company, Matt. How badly did media reports damage your business?
Well, I can tell you that since COVID, the retrofit market has slowed down. My primary customer is only condominiums. I don't do fire sprinkler. I do security cameras or access control. I bring existing buildings up to current code compliance. So yes, it has affected me because a lot of these residents did not want us in their units during COVID. So that slowed us down a bit. Then on top of that, when Champlain hit, business were slow, but thank God I've got several thousand accounts that kept us afloat. And we're thriving. And in fact, we're thriving more than ever before since the Champlain. And on top of that, there's a lot of acquisitions that have been taking place in South Florida since we're an open state. And we're picking up a lot of new customers because of these acquisitions. What works in Boise, Idaho, guys, don't work in South Florida. So you keep buying them up. You're minimizing my competition pool, and it's growing.
I think the question was, did the media really place any blame on the fire alarm company, and did that affect, how potential customers or existing customers might look at you?
I had to explain myself to a few customers, but a lot of the customers that know us know how we operate. So the answer is no. I don't think it affected us a lot from our existing customer base. Did it hurt us from business? It's still unknown.
All right. How about this one? How did the payout of this claim affect your insurance premiums and renewal of policies?
It's a good question. My insurance renews in November. I've spoken to my insurance carrier, my attorney, and my attorney thinks because of this unusual circumstance, possibly no increase whatsoever because of this tragedy. So I'm hoping there is no increases. If there is an increase, we'll have to address it then.
I have a feeling that you probably won't be penalized, but we'll see. We understand that only the smoke detectors in front of the elevator are the ones that sends the recall alarm. We do not know if that is the rule in Florida. Why did the elevator recall if we do not know what tripped the system?
It's a good question. We don't know that. That's why it was important to grab the CPU, because the CPU would have contained 1,000 alarm events. We would have been able to read the entire story. But unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to go into the building. And I'm going to add, on the earlier emails, I volunteered personally to go into that building and retrieve that CPU because I knew this day of reckoning was going to happen, and I wanted to make sure I had all the evidence, and I was denied access. So we don't have the real.
But is this accurate that only the smoke detectors activating in front of the elevators will recall the elevator?
Correct. It's programmed for smoke actions. Yes.
It has to be those particular smoke detectors to activate.
Yes.
Before the elevators are recalled. So why did the elevators get recalled here? Those smoke detectors probably didn't activate.
Again, it's unknown. We don't know. We don't know it. That's why it's important to have had that CPU, because that CPU would have stored 1,000 alarm events. It would have told the entire story on what device activated, if in fact the device did activate it. It's still unknown.
All right. Great job is another comment. If you look at the garage gate, the water was coming from the left side of the sprinkler. The left side of the water was coming from the left side.
We're going to go to that picture right now. All right, there you go. Yes, but if you notice in the video, the water is the sprinkler head's on the left side looking in, but the water seems to be coming from the right side, where you see the yellow arrows, and it's a deluge of water. It's not pressurized; it's just dropping, and that's PVC pipe. And above that PVC pipe, let me explain, you have the building's drainage system, you have the pool's drainage system, you have domestic waste, you have domestic water. So there's a lot of fluid just strapped to that ceiling. So we don't know what that water was.
You think it was the pool emptying into the garage?
Of course, the pool is right above it. You see the size of the PVC piping. A lot of drainage infrastructure just there in front of the garage door alone. So you can't take that out. You can't take that out. Now, if you see the red arrow, that sprinkler head, what's above that red arrow? You're going to see a concrete header. It's right against that header. So I don't believe that sprinkler head was the culprit of that video. I think that water in that video is from the drainage of the pool or some other domesticated water. Not the sprinkler.
Why are you not sending contact ID? I'm not sure what that means. Is Matt's
Building,
contact?
we offered it since the building had 24-hour security. They didn't. They could not afford it. In fact, they couldn't even afford to replace the fire alarm system in the building.
Oh,
now,
what is contact ID?
Contact ID is pinpoint identification. If Central Station was to receive any signals, it would give an exact signal on what device triggered, what location, etc. So when the fire department goes on site, they already know beforehand where to go to. But in this situation, since the fire alarm panel is located in the main entrance next to the door, the moment the fire department arrives, you're going to have one firefighter next to the panel. Then you can have other firefighters going throughout the field to extinguish the fire. If the fire department's this is important because this is voice evacuation. If the fire department's communication systems didn't work, their radios, they could have grabbed a handset. There was fire phone jacks throughout the building. The exits and the stairwell had fire phone jacks. So there was a means of communication.
And of course, that was what the code required. That's why.
Yes, sir.
What was the arrival time of the fire department? If you know.
That We do not know, but what I can tell you, looking at the videos, there was a heck of a lot of trucks surrounding that building. In fact, there was probably hundreds of emergency response vehicles around the perimeter of that property.
That was after the collapse. How did they get there before? Did they get there during the 7 minutes before the collapse?
I honestly
No,
don't
They
know.
were on the way because they dispatched. They were on the way during that time.
So they weren't,
Now
hadn't arrived yet. Okay.
Yeah, now the fire department was within 3 to 5 minutes of that location, so I'm sure they got there pretty quickly because the closest fire department for that was located in Bow Harbor. This was Surfside, so you're talking about within a mile or two. So I'm sure it was pretty quick once they received the signal.
Okay, but not within the 7 minutes, I guess. Was your
No.
panel reporting, I think you answered this, was your panel reporting point ID or just general signals?
The panel was reporting pinpoint identification.
Okay.
It was all of the devices. It was an addressable system. All the devices were addressable.
All right. Why was the alarm system not programmed to send the point information to the central station? I assume because it wasn't required, right?
It wasn't required, and it was a costing issue for the association. We offered that. They didn't want to pay the extra money to monitor. Since they had somebody at the front entrance, they just wanted trouble and alarm conditions only. That's what we provided.
All right. Somebody is speculating elevator lobby smokes probably activated due to dust and debris from the building concrete movement causing the upcoming collapse. Maybe. In Ontario, in Ontario, it's required that the FACP is linked to the elevator control to recall the elevators to the main floor. Okay.
That's exactly what it did.
Very interesting presentation. Was any HAJ, the fire marshal, investigators, or insurance investigators particularly helpful or unhelpful to you from the onset?
In fact, I've not heard from any HJ or any expert on this matter. That's why I try to retrieve the CPU just in case we had to explain this. Not one person has contacted us at all in regards to the fire alarm system. Again, it's a fire alarm system. It's not a seismic detection system. Let me throw this at you. Imagine nothing happened. Again, there was no flame. There was no smoke. It's not designed to trigger for a seismic event. Imagine if no signal was sent at all and it was only a 7-minute window. Thank God, whatever it triggered that alarm system, it did what it did, because had it not, there would have been much more lives lost because everybody was sleeping at 1:15 a.m.
Do you know if anyone actually did evacuate that building?
There was some residents that evacuated the building. Now, the portion that was still standing, you'll see that the strobe lights were flashing, specifically on the roof and the lower floor. So somebody had to either manually activate that or possibly a catastrophic failure in the conduit system or dust debris. That's still unknown, but with the video coverage from all the media outlets, and there was dozens of trucks out there, there was a lot of evidence supporting that the system actually worked. In fact, I have something here that I want to show. It may not be legible. This is a text from let me get a little closer. This is a text from the person that received the initial call. And if you read it, you will see that the security guard had to yell over the fire alarm system, and she was freaking out.
Okay. Is it considered standard practice to charge extra for sending point information to central station?
Yes.
Okay. And let's see, we're getting to it. We've got to get to the end because we're running out of time here. Contact ID is used by the addressable point system to the communication DACT. Okay, that's I think Matt.
Yeah, we use our own private AES network.
And this is, you charge more for contact contact ID reporting. I gather you do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. And thank you, Matt, for your time and candidness. And The fire alarm panel was not damaged. Where is the panel now?
The panel is unknown. Now, I want to add, during the collapse of the building, the lobby was actually, in fact, it was intact. There was no damage done to the lobby whatsoever. Had they given me permission to retrieve the CPU, I could have taken it out very easily. That, again, there was no damage to that lobby area whatsoever.
The question here is, why would contact ID cost more? You can briefly mention that. But the question I have before that is, why the issue? Contact ID would not have made any difference here, would it?
No, it wouldn't have. And Central Station would charge more for that. And again, it was offered, but the building declined that coverage.
So it's a monitoring issue as opposed to an equipment issue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it wouldn't have mattered here anyway, as far as I can see.
No, it's not a seismic detection system. It's a fire alarm.
So someone says because you would know the point that caused the issue and the alarm point. I got it,
Well,
but with this particular case, it wouldn't matter. Wouldn't matter.
No, and if we captured the CPU, it would have told the entire story anyways if we had to present it to the authorities. Again, it stores up to 1,000 emergency events. All we had to do is provide a printout. But again, I couldn't retrieve it. They would not allow me to personally go into the building to get it.
USA Central wants you to know that they don't charge extra for many zones. Okay.
Send me your price list.
Yeah, send them a price list. Okay. Oh, and neither does Alarm Tech. Here we go. So they're all coming in and telling us what they would have charged. Okay. Sounds to me like some of these questions are starting to repeat themselves. And in any event, we are over time at this point, out of time. I want to thank Matt, and I want to thank his partner for Eldorado for their presentation. It was really thorough, and it was very informative, and it was one of our best attended webinars. So I know that you guys found it would have been very interesting. It was very interesting to you. Well, we'll close with this one. A few comments from Canada. Couldn't be further from Miami. All our systems have to sound on any alarm throughout the whole building. Very few are monitored for anything other than alarm, supervisory. Most guards do not know how to use the fire alarm paging system. Every time I was in an apartment or hotel and the fire alarm was going off, I've been the only one standing outside. Everyone else ignores the alarm. I have to admit, fire alarm goes off all the time in my office building. I mean, I don't leave. I sit here, and so.
At the end of the day, it's all about training. Again, getting back to that building, there was a turnover of employees. It was impossible to keep them all up to speed with training. Had they requested the training, we would have been more than happy to offer it to them. So now the funny thing is, I want to add, this fire alarm system is used by condominiums for multiple reasons. If a hurricane is coming in, so they know how to use these evacuation systems, and this is important. If a hurricane's en route, they can grab the all-call button, say, hey guys, please take your lawn chairs off of your balconies, or they can do selective floor reporting and say the pest control guy is coming in at 10 a.m. on the 10th floor, be ready for him. So these associations use these evacuation systems more than just fire alarm reporting. They use it for conveniences, for mass reporting on different subjects.
I get a request every now and then, not every now, all the time, for the evac system. Where is it covered on the standardized form contracts? Well, it's covered in the fire all-in-one. So we include that, and we also include, there's something in there about the ARC system, I think it's called, that's in there. So we have everything that the fire alarm AHJs require as part of the fire alarm system installation in the fire all-in-one. I also want to point out that in this particular case, it doesn't sound like anyone was waving around their contracts to get out of their exposure or their liability. But not every every fire loss is of this magnitude. And I would urge all of you to have proper contractual protection, because otherwise you'll wind up paying. I don't think you want to pay for a $10 million building or a $5 million building. Make sure you have the contractual protection that you need. Okay, with that, I'm going to thank them again, Matt and Eldorado. I want to thank all of you for attending, and see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.